Welcome everyone. We had some technical difficulties being our inaugural online forum, but we seem to have all of the bugs worked out. So on behalf of the San Clemente Chamber of Commerce, thank you everyone for attending the 2020 Virtual Candidate Forum for the City of San Clemente City Council election for the 2-year seat. My name is Jim Wynne, and I will be the co-moderator for this evening's forum. I serve as a member of the board of directors for the chamber, and I work in the area as a commercial real estate broker, providing real estate solutions for businesses and property owners in South Orange County.
Welcome everyone. My name is Steve Miska, and I will be the co-moderator this evening with Jim, focusing on the audience questions. I'm the executive director of First Amendment Voice, a co-sponsor for this event and a nonpartisan San Clemente-based nonprofit that promotes civic engagement around the country. Audience members, you have 2 viewing options this evening. Your default option is probably in the gallery mode, but your other option that you can use is the speaker mode. So if you go up to the upper right-hand corner of your webinar screen, you can toggle between those 2 modes. Gallery mode allows you to see all of the candidates at once, and is probably your default mechanism. Speaker mode displays the speaker who is currently speaking and puts everybody else in smaller boxes up at the top of your screen. To ask questions, please scroll to the bottom of your webinar and see the Q&A function at the bottom. There's a little icon down there. If you click on that, you'll see that function open up and you'll be able to submit your questions to the candidates. Feel free to read any of the open questions as those questions come in. And if you like them, there's a little thumbs up icon right next to each question. You can click a thumbs up. Audience voting is a big part of this experience, and the questions with the most votes will rise to the top of the queue and be more likely to get asked this evening. We're excited to give San Clemente residents the opportunity to learn more about these wonderful volunteers who are stepping forward to serve our community. Thank you for coming out to join us this evening. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Steve. On behalf of the chamber, we thank First Amendment Voice for co-sponsoring our event and assisting with the technology necessary for our first ever online forum. We especially thank the candidates for their willingness to serve the city in a leadership position that comes with so much responsibility and whose decisions as city council members will affect our quality of life. I will go through the format of the forum now, and then we'll introduce each candidate. After the introductions, each candidate will provide a 1-minute opening statement. Then each candidate will be asked 4 pre-composed questions determined by the forum committee, which they will each have 1 minute to answer. Following those questions, the candidates will answer 3 questions from you, the audience. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each of those questions. Lastly, each of the candidates will have 1 minute for their closing statements. Our session tonight is scheduled to end no later than 8 p.m. The forum is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube in 24 to 48 hours and can be viewed up until the election to help make informed decisions. Before you are 5 of the 8 candidates who are running for the 1 open seat for the 2-year term to replace Mayor Dan Bain, who resigned prior to the end of his term. Miss Donna Vadreen, would you please say hello to the audience?
Hello, San Clemente.
Donna is a registered nurse and certified legal nursing consultant with a background in managing businesses and hospital departments. Donna resides in the Forester Ranch neighborhood with her husband, Warren. Together, they have 7 adult children and 5 grandchildren. Mr. Tyler Boden, please say hello to the audience.
Hello, and thanks for having me.
Tyler graduated from San Clemente High School and went to San Diego State University, where he served as president and CEO of the student government. He now operates a local business in San Clemente developing solar projects. He lives in downtown San Clemente and enjoys surfing and serving the community through the San Clemente Rotary Club and the City of San Clemente Human Affairs Committee. Mr. Zhen, please say hello. Zhen, please say hello. Give Zen's computer here a second to catch up.
Yes, I'm here.
There he is. Zhen currently serves as a planning commissioner for the city of San Clemente. Zhen and his wife moved to San Clemente in 2004, and his son is now in San Clemente High. He loves surfing and the beaches and hiking the trails and biking through the city. He is a licensed architect and certified planner and runs a design studio in town working on land planning and architectural design. Mr. Stephen Noblock, please say hello. Try saying hello again, Stephen. Well, for some reason.
Hello.
There you
Good to
go.
hear.
It's
There
so
you
nice to hear your voice. Stephen has served as a City of San Clemente council member in the past. He is a graduate of Long Beach State University and attended law school at Western State University. He has served on the boards for the Air Pollution Control District, the Assessment Appeals Board, his church's Board of Deacons and Board of Elders, and Gleaners, Inc., which is an organization that coordinates volunteers to conduct services to inmates in the jail system. Mr. Jim Dahl, please say hello to the audience.
Hi, everybody.
Jim is a 50-year resident and has served the city of San Clemente as a firefighter. He retired as captain, and as a city council member. He served 4 terms as mayor. He has served as the Orange County representative for the San Diego Association of Government Borders Committee, as a board of director for the San Clemente Exchange Club, as director of the Coastal Animal Authority, and as a director of the Orange County Vector Control. So that's our candidates. So as a reminder, this event is a forum for candidates to voice their ideas and give the voters a chance to get to know them and learn about their positions on important issues facing the city. This is not a debate format, and the guidelines that we ask each of the candidates to follow is to treat each other respectfully and not to address one another directly. This is your opportunity to speak directly to the potential voters. We also ask the audience to please be respectful in your questions to the candidates. Thank you. We will now start with each of the candidates giving their opening statements. Mr. Stephen Noblock, you get to go first.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate all the candidates for spending the time and energy to run for office. It's important, and I appreciate you doing that. I am running for the city council because I think we need leadership in our city. We've had a divided city council for quite a while. And I am running for the council because I'm a pro-business, pro-property rights candidate. I believe in small government, less taxes, and a strong safety department for our city. I've served before. I've spent my entire adult life in volunteer service in local government. Jim mentioned a few of the committees I've served on. For this race, I've been endorsed by our state senator, Pat Bates, our assembly nominee, Lori Davies, Mayor Pro Tem, Laura Ferguson, several members of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, and because of the regional issues involved in South County, I've even been endorsed by the mayor of San Diego, as well as Rob O'Neill, a member of SEAL Team 6. But
Thanks, Stephen. The minutes go fast. Marlon is holding up a timer, so that will help you.
Thank you.
And, all of you, and giving your answers and ending on our 1-minute timer. So we'll move on next to an opening statement from Mr. Tyler Bowden.
Thank you. And first off, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and First Amendment Voice for putting on this forum and creating a platform for us candidates to share ourselves with the community. My name is Tyler Bowden, and I first moved to San Clemente 20 years ago when I was 12 years old. I went through middle school and high school here, and then went off to college at San Diego State, as Jen mentioned earlier. I really pursued leadership in college and eventually became president and CEO of the Student Government Corporation there, representing over 35,000 students and chairing a student council of over 30 students using Robert's Rules of Order, which was quite a challenge, as you can imagine. I've had a lot of leadership roles since college in both the public and private sector, and I always wanted to move back to San Clemente, so I did so 5 years ago I now own and operate a small business in San Clemente developing solar projects. I've been a part of the Rotary Club for the past 4 years as a leader and the Human Affairs Committee for the past 2 years as a leader. And I'm currently a leader in our community, and I'll continue being a leader in our community, whether or not I'm elected, but I hope to earn your vote so I can apply my leadership skills to the council and unify us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Next up is Ms. Donna Vadreen.
As a registered nurse for 40 years, a former Air Force captain for 7 years, a legal nurse consultant with a background in managing businesses and hospital departments, I am qualified to lead and to serve San Clemente. I have a Bachelor of Science in Nursing and a master's degree in Health Services Management. I have successfully improved hospital departments as a director, corralling budgets while bringing these departments up to patient safety and standard of care guidelines. Our city is a special place with a rich heritage, outstanding schools, and beautiful natural resources. I will work to protect and preserve our beaches, parks, trails, and open spaces. I will seek to increase opportunities for affordable housing and facilitate business development, making it possible for middle-class families to move and live here. I will take the initiative and lead. It is time to lead and act, not review. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up with his opening statement is Mr. Jim Dahl.
Good evening. My wife Alice and I are 55-year residents of San Clemente. We've raised 2 children, Jim and Katie, retired Orange County Sheriff's Department, daughter Steve, and Ingrid Lee. She's an HOA director, and we have 5 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild living in San Clemente. I'm a retired fire captain with the OCFA with 38 years of service in 2009. In 1996, I was elected to the city council. Until 2012, I served 4 terms as mayor. In the ensuing years, I've championed your causes and with responsible leadership, moving San Clemente forward. I share your concern with the issues that are shaping the future of San Clemente. I've worked to enhance fire, police, paramedic, and police protection, parks, traffic code enforcement, historic coastal preservation, water quality, and business opportunities. With the closing of San Clemente Hospital and emergency room, I'll work towards its reopening, providing vital medical services to all of San Clemente. During the next 2 years, I work with my fellow council members to address fiscal and city mismanagement problems that face our city.
Thanks,
These
Jim.
issues continue to guide us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your opening statement. And last but not least, Mr. Zhen Wu.
Good evening. My name is Zhen Wu. I'm an architect. I'm land use planning expert at the national level. My family has lived in town for 16 years. In the past 5 years, I spent over 2,000 hours to serve on planning commission, design review, and coastal advisory committees. I've always been a protector of our city's general plan, the Spanish Village by the Sea character, our local businesses, and the people's quality of life. Because of that, I was unanimously reappointed by the city council. I'm a problem solver and a voice of reason. That's why I was told by my colleague, they work well with me. My priority as your city council member is to help the community to recover from the current crisis and bring long-term prosperity with the combination of economic development and a conservative fiscal policy. By the way, I got my master's degree from the University of Southern California School of Public Policy. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. So that concludes the opening statement. So we will now move on to the questions that were put together and determined by the Political Action Committee who put on this forum. So the first question will go to Tyler Boden, and this same question will be for all of the candidates, which is, what makes you the best candidate for business in San Clemente?
Thank you very much for the question. And as I mentioned earlier, I am a small business owner, and I've worked in business for the past 8 years or so. I understand what it's like to operate a business, and I live in the downtown area, so I've seen the challenge that many of our businesses have faced, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. I'm somebody who recognizes the value of a pro-business mindset in our society and in our community. And I'd like to promote that as a council member as much as I can. I'm obviously the youngest person on this group, and I don't know everything, but I have a very diverse and wide group of advisors who can help me to understand all the issues that I might face as a city council member. And I'm one who's very thoughtful and reasonable in my approach to everything. And that's what I would do in approaching the role of being a city council member, is looking at all the issues that we face and trying to find a reasoned approach so we can support a thriving business economy in San Clemente that also enriches our Spanish Village by the Sea. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. The same question, what makes you the best candidate for business in San Clemente, to Ms. Donna Vadreen?
I will be informed and lead on sustained recovery, balancing risk, listening to the science so business can reopen and thrive. I want to help local business adapt to a new way of working, think of new ways of doing business, help business maximize their potential, encourage spending to support local business, streamline, be more efficient and business friendly with permitting and planning processes, will spur economic growth and increase competitiveness. I will, the city, let's see, I will, that's all I have to say on that.
Well said. We'll move on next to Mr. Jim Dahl.
Thanks, Jim. During the COVID crisis, it's very obvious that our businesses, local businesses, have had a tough time. I think the city should do all it can to support local business by speeding up the permit process, planning process, and adapt ordinances that are very business friendly. Sign issues, I think, should be set aside for a little while so visibility for our local businesses can increase. The City Council should support and has supported the Chamber of Commerce and our business community over the years with different programs and policies. I would hope that the City Council would return to its ability to provide financial help to the Chamber and to businesses to advertise their businesses and the community.
Very good, thank you. Zhen Wu, Mr. Zhen Wu, you are next. And we don't have your audio for a second. Why don't you say hello and let's make sure we can hear you. Okay?
Hello, can you hear me?
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. As a small business myself, I understand some of the businesses. I have helped our local business as a planning commissioner. I've reviewed numerous ordinances and projects in the past 5 years on design review subcommittee and a planning commission. I will do the following to help our business. First, to hire a city manager who excels on economic development. I've met with our economic development officer. I've met with the Chamber of Commerce. I've met with the DBA president to talk about the ideas and initiatives to attract and develop our business. For example, to reconfigure or enhance our Del Mar, integration of Del Mar and Peterborough, establish the historic district in Northeast, etc. And also to encourage more outdoor activities such as dining and street events. I will also review the development standards of our underutilized areas, such as the South El Community, or such as the Pico Corridor, to increase activities along the corridor. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. And the last person to answer what makes you the best candidate for business in San Clemente would be Mr. Stephen Noblock.
Thank you, Jim. I believe I'm the best candidate for business in San Clemente because my background has been in business my entire career. I don't come out of a government background, but out of a business background. I worked for the largest retailer in San Clemente and witnessed firsthand the hostile attitude that our city council has displayed toward businesses. Their policy has been not one of cooperation and being an advocate for business, but how to oppose business. I think that needs to stop. I was personally offended when the city of San Clemente kicked the Chamber of Commerce out of their rented space. That was done, I believe, for purely political vindictive motives, should never have happened, and needs to be addressed. I have a background in business and leadership. I taught graduate and undergraduate courses in management, business management for the University of Redlands for quite a few years. And I've run personal businesses. I've run my own law office. I've run my own rental business. And I've been involved in managing businesses across the country, working for the largest national title insurance company, working with their escrow operations locally. I've been involved in the management decisions. I'm very business friendly and believe I can have that attitude and assist the Chamber of Commerce in its dealings.
Thank you for wrapping up that question. We appreciate it. We will move on to question number 2, which I'll ask to Donna Vadreen. And that question is, what one value added trait or characteristic would you bring to the council?
I would bring experience and honesty and integrity. And those are important values. And those are the values that I would bring.
Terrific. Okay, thank you very much. Next up would be Jim Dahl. What one value-added trait or characteristic would you bring to the council?
Well, as a 38-year fire captain with the city of San Clemente and the Orange County Fire Authority, I developed a expertise in making decisions. Decision-making is very important in our community. And it seems at times that city council in the past few years hasn't been able to make rational
Hey, Jim, we lost you there for a second. Let's,
Oh, wait, I'm back.
okay, let's give Jim, can you just restart Jim's time?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I
We're
don't
all trying to get used to all this technology.
Yeah, for some reason it dropped out.
We got the 38-year fire captain decision making.
Okay, I'm a 38-year fire captain, retired fire captain in San Clemente. And during my years in my profession, I was always able to make quick decisions, life and death decisions. City council, I did the same thing, but not quite life and death, but changing situations in our community. I think that I have the ability to make sound decisions, whether they be business, whether it be safety, whether they be planning. So I think I would bring a lot more back to the council that's been missing over the years. And I think I'd try to bring everybody together, do a team building workshop, get everybody on the same page.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Zhen Wu.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I've been on planning commission for many years. I can bring my knowledge, experience, and land use expertise to the table to tackle many issues. In the recent couple of years, the city is facing many issues. For example, the toll road, the hospital, and the homelessness. Each of the issue has something to do with the land use. And I'm one of the 200 land use planning experts recognized nationally. So I can bring that expertise to help the city to tackle those issues. In addition to that, I'm a critical thinker. I have a comprehensive approach. And not to mention, I have a collaborative approach with my colleagues. That's what I can bring to the table. I'm your voice of reason. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Stephen Noblock.
Thank you, Jim. I believe my value-added characteristic is one of being pro-business, free enterprise, and property rights. I believe I'm an advocate for these values. I believe in them deeply, and I would bring them to the council. That said, that's about it.
Very good. Well, to wrap up our question of the one value-added trait or characteristic would you bring to the city council? Let's go to Tyler Boden.
Thank you, Jim. And so I was raised with 7 sisters and 1 brother as a middle child. And so as you can imagine, there's a lot of personality going on in my sibling group. And I always took the role of mediator in my sibling group. I think that's really the value add characteristic that I would bring to the council is somebody who's able to sit down with anyone, regardless of their views or my views or how we might agree or disagree on those views, and listen and hear them out and understand them, seek to understand before I try to be understood, so that we can build consensus on the council and move forward to build a stronger San Clemente. I think more than anything, that's what this council needs. And with a youthful and young perspective that's able to do that, I think I'll really add a lot of value to this council. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We will move on to our third of 4 questions. And Jim Dahl will be the first one to answer. Why did you choose to run for the 2-year term versus the 4-year term?
Well, after being on city council for 16 years and serving as mayor 4 times, it's obvious that we needed some leadership on the city council. And the 2-year term was just fine with me. I don't want to run again, so I think I'd be more effective during my tenure on the council if I'm reelected. So I think it's important to me that we have stability. I can bring people together. All the council members that are serving right now are friends, and I work very well with them, and I have always worked very well with them. The biggest challenge, I believe, was going to be picking a new city manager, and I've worked for 7 city managers, whether being on the city council or working for the city of San Clemente. So I know the traits that are needed to make a good city manager. The council needs to set the policy, and the manager needs to carry it out.
Thank you for that answer. And Jim, we lost your video. We can see a photo of you, but if you want to try, there we go, you're back for the rest of the call, but we were able to hear you just fine. So next, answering that question would be Mr. Zhen Wu.
Thank you. Well, I've had enough experience on Planning Commission, Coastal Advisory Committee, and Design Review Committee. I'm graduate from a Leadership San Clemente program too. I was a graduate of Police Academy from one other city. So I know our business enough to take that step. I want to make a baby step so that in 2 years, the people can review my performance to decide if you want me to continue or not. And the last reason is, quite frankly, I think the 2-year race is a little bit easier. By the time I pull the paper, I think it's an easier race. So I picked that 2 years.
Excellent. Next up is Mr. Stephen Noblock.
Yes, the reason why I decided to run for the 2-year term rather than the 4-year term is that I realized that the city council was divided and we needed a pro-business, conservative tax fighter on the council. And when I looked at the candidates that had already signed up for the 4-year spot, I saw that there were several strong pro-business, conservative tax fighter mindset candidates. So rather than run against them to make sure we move the city in the right direction, looking at the 2-year spots, I didn't see anyone that I recognized as a strong conservative tax fighter. Now I got to say, with the exception of Jim Dahl, because I wasn't aware that Jim Dahl was going to run when I took out paper. So I'll don't mean anything negative on Jim, but that's why I ran for the 2-year term.
Excellent. Same question to Tyler Boden.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And I've been closely watching, the city council meetings for the past 2 to 3 years. And as I said earlier, I've been involved with the Human Affairs Committee for the past 2 years. And I've really just been getting deeply involved in understanding the operations of the city and the issues that the city faces. I saw the great leadership that Dan Bain offered to the council, particularly as mayor, in leading the council and getting them to do hard work together and find consensus. And when he resigned was the moment that I knew for sure that I really wanted to run for city council to fill that void that he would leave in his resignation. But I knew that I would be compared to a certain other younger person who's run for city council in the past. And I wanted to differentiate myself from that person and show the residents of San Clemente that I recognize I have something to prove. Even though I have 15 years of leadership experience, I want to prove to the residents that I'm capable of doing this job. And I want to do that in a 2-year term so that they'll vote for me again for a 4-year term. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. So the last person to answer the question as to why they ran for the 2-year versus the 4-year term would be Ms. Donna Vadreen.
I am on on the ballot for a 2-year term on San Clemente City Council, and I plan to run again for an additional 4 years, 6 years total. I do respect several people that are running for the 4-year seat, and that's one of the reasons why I chose to run for the 2 years. And to finish my minute, my campaign is focused on the people and businesses in San Clemente, on families and schools, opportunity for all, working together as a community. San Clemente needs balanced and steady leadership. I am ready for the challenges ahead. I will serve with respect and put the people of San Clemente first. And first, I will serve the 2-year term and then run for an additional 4 years. Thank you.
Excellent. So we will move on to our fourth and final pre-composed question by the PAC, and then we'll move on to the questions from the audience. We started out asking what makes you the best candidate for business in San Clemente. And now we would like to know what specific actions you would take to improve business and industry in San Clemente for the long run. And the first person to take on that question would be Mr. Jim Dahl.
Thanks, Jim. Well, you know, I do believe that the first action that needs to be taken by the city council is to hire a city manager. There's no question that that's the most important issue facing us at the current time. We need support for our business, so consequently, a good, strong city manager with big business acumen will enhance our business practices in San Clemente. For so long, we've had issues with political interference in business, and I think that with a good city manager and a good planning department and building department, business will thrive in San Clemente. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So those are the end of the pre-scripted questions. As a note to the audience, none of the candidates knew what these questions were in advance, so I think they all did an excellent job of asking them. If we were in front of an audience, I'd ask for a round of applause, so you'll just have to picture the roar of applause. One of the things I learned in school was that a change of medium relieves the tedium. So now Steve Miska will moderate the audience Q&A so that you can ask the questions that are on your mind. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you to the candidates for your answers and to the Chamber of Commerce for helping the community better understand where the candidates stand on matters relating to the business community. And now it's the audience's turn. Some of the audience has already emailed in questions in advance, and some of them have asked questions in the Q&A function. Now, Jim noted that the candidates did not know the questions that they were going to be asked in the scripted questions. They can see the questions in the Q&A right now. So you're all welcome to open up your Q&A function. And if you're in the audience and you already have not done that, please scroll to the bottom of your webinar screen, click on the Q&A icon, and then you're welcome to type in a question. Alternatively, you can look at the questions that are there. There are currently 12 open in the queue, and you can vote on those questions. There's a little thumbs up icon next to each question. If you like it, just click on it, and you'll see the questions with the most votes will rise to the top. We might not get through all the questions tonight, but it looks like we're on time to answer the majority of them. They keep coming in. So thank you for that. And with that, we'll go ahead and get to the first question. And we're going to go with Lori Donchek's question, just so the candidates can see it's got 9 votes already. The current order, or the next order for this question, will go Mr. Zhen Wu, Mr. Noblock, Mr. Boden, Ms. Vidrine, and Mr. Dahl. So with that, what process would you follow to identify a new city manager, and what qualities would you seek in the ideal candidate? Mr. Wu.
For the process, we already have I believe we already hired a search firm to look for a new city manager. I haven't reviewed those standards. I think based on what I hear, I wouldn't have much problem because that was a professional firm, search firm. The traits and the quality I'm looking from our new city manager is the top one. They are interagency coordination. He or she has to excel on economic development. Has to be a true leader to lead and motivate our staff, and be very approachable to our people. And lastly, and not leastly, to be even-handed, have an even-hand approach to the city council. And overall, I'm looking for a better combination of professional skill and ethics.
Thank you for that. Mr. Noblock, you're next.
I would look for a city manager candidate that has local experience with coastal cities. We've already got a recruitment process in place, but I would prefer somebody that is familiar with Southern California, familiar with the beach communities, the Coastal Commission, and also a city manager that, as a characteristic, is one that's business-oriented and people-oriented, and doesn't choke on the process. We have had too many managers in our town that insist that the regulations and all the governmental criteria, that we dot the I's and cross the T's, and they don't realize the reality of how businesses operate and the need for people to receive service from their city and not to be an advocate with against the citizens. So I would look for a business-friendly, people-oriented, business-oriented, coastal-oriented manager.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Bowden.
Thank you, Steve. And the first thing that I would do in an effort to recruit a strong city manager to the city of San Clemente would be to try to unify the council. I think if we want to recruit a good city manager, we need to display to the pool of candidates that we have a strong and soundly operating city council that's able to work together and that won't drive a city manager out. And once we've done that, I'll work with Bob Murray Associates to understand what their process is in recruiting a city manager and find out how we can better improve that process to more effectively recruit somebody. What I would look for in a city manager is somebody who is interested in economic development and also understands the needs of San Clemente. We have a very engaged populace in San Clemente. We've got a lot of engaged residents, and we need a city manager who's willing to engage with the residents to that tune. And so somebody who's interested in economic development, who's capable of innovation and creativity so that we can support a thriving business economy that enriches our Spanish Village by the Sea. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vidrine, you're up.
The city needs to have strong listening skills and communication skills, approachable character and integrity, responsible leadership and managing a city budget, a problem solver. The city manager will need to brief council members on city issues. Essentially, the city manager is a COO of a city. I would review applicants, then hire an executive search firm if necessary, and conduct follow-up interviews with key staff and council. The city manager should have the ability to communicate effectively with the mayor, the city council, community members, and staff at all levels.
Thank you. Mr. Dahl, you'll be the last one to answer that question.
Well, after working with 7 city managers over probably about almost 50 years, I think it's very incumbent upon the city council to pick the right person. Right background, especially his background. Check his background or her background extensively, not just gloss over it. We need somebody who's very good at business retention and business attraction. Background in local Southern California cities, but it's not outlining just Southern California. It can be from anywhere else. We've had city managers from Washington, from Central California. We've had some great city managers locally. So I think it's very important to really look at their background and feel out what their intentions are. And especially, most important is community involvement. Make sure the new city manager understands, like everybody said, the city is very small, but it's large. It's 20 square miles, but yet we have a population of 70,000 folks. So And the most important thing is to get a city manager that will take policy from the city council and implement that policy, take care of his department heads and his employees and treat them with respect. And
Thank you.
okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I did give you a few more seconds on that one. I'll just let the candidates know we are doing very well on time. So if you do go over a little bit, that is okay, but please don't try to abuse that too much. And thank you to our audience. We currently have 14 questions open. We also have 3 others that came in via email, and we'll work those in. We'll try to get to as many as we can. I'll remind our speakers, you can see the order that goes on the next question in your chat function. So the next order will be Mr. Noblock, Mr. Boden, Ms. Vidrine, Mr. Dahl, and Mr. Wu. And we'll continue to rotate in that order so that everybody gets a chance to go first and go last. The next question with the most votes comes from Glenn Walker, and it's in respect to the homeless situation. What is your solution for our homeless issue in San Clemente? Do you support permanent supportive housing? Mr. Noblock.
I don't support permanent supportive housing. I think homelessness is an issue that arises for 2 reasons, obviously. One is mental health issues, and the other is the economy. When people can't afford homes, they become homeless. And I think there's a real need to help people with a helping hand. And I think that issue needs to be addressed regionally, not locally. And so I'm in favor of providing a helping hand, but not a permanent helping hand for those that can help themselves. For those that have true mental and drug issues, those folks need help. They need assistance. But I think to address those issues, it's much larger than the city of San Clemente. Those are, again, regional issues, and which is why I've been endorsed by our state legislators, the county board of supervisors, and other major surrounding cities, because those issues are regional. We do need to address them with the help of our neighbors. But permanent supportive housing for those that are in economic hardship, I don't think that's a good idea. I think by improving the economy, by making our city business friendly, by streamlining the development process and helping our economy to grow and jobs to grow and be created in San Clemente, that would help the economy, which would help people with their finances, which would significantly address the homeless problem.
Thank you. Mr. Bowden.
Thank you, Steve. And the first thing I should say is that the issue of homelessness is a very challenging issue with no clear and easy answer. And it's going to take a lot of collaboration and intention and care in addressing this issue in our society and in our community. But as it pertains to our community, I'm already actively working on the issue of homelessness. As a member of the Human Affairs Committee that I was appointed to by the City Council, I've also been appointed to the Joint Homelessness Subcommittee in partnership with the Public Safety Committee. And what we're working on is putting together a stakeholder group of entities that are already working on homelessness, be it Orange County Sheriffs, Park Rangers, Marine Safety, Fire. We've also got FAM and CityNet and other homeless outreach services, and we want to get the county mental health services involved as well to get them on the same page and figuring out what their process is in addressing homelessness out in the streets. And we also need to address where we can have regional emergency shelter space in the South County area. I don't think it's going to work in San Clemente. I also don't think we should be focused on permanent supportive housing. It's emergency shelter space that we need to satisfy the Martin versus Boise ruling, and that's what we should be focused on. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vidrine.
We need to learn, listen, and take responsible action. We need to find solutions to decrease the unhoused and strategies to constructively prevent future homelessness in our city. Our efforts need to be focused on solutions to end homelessness in San Clemente. Some possible solutions could include defining the problem. We have 50 to 75 individuals, a safe parking lot for those who live in their car, monitored with defined hours, a day center for homeless services, a 30-day transitional shelter to connect the homeless with benefits and services, partnering with Habitat for Humanity to build affordable housing. Let's find opportunities to establish relationships, trust, and connection to engage our San Clemente community in compassionate solutions for our unhoused homeless. We can study the transitional shelters that opened this year in Fullerton and Huntington Beach. We can learn from their success in obtaining funding and contracting a service provider to operate the facility professionally. We do need to deal with the homeless in San Clemente. We can't ask the county, the state, we can't ask other people to come in and solve our homeless problem. We need to identify the problem, work for strategies and solutions, and then network with the county to access funds that are available and programs that are available.
Thank you. Mr. Dahl.
Permanent supportive housing is a real challenge in San Clemente. First of all, supportive services are almost non-existent other than FAM and another couple of organizations. I think it should be on a regional basis, supported by the county, the state, and the federal government. San Clemente's been on the forefront of housing projects in San Clemente to support low income, seniors, and workforce. And during my 16 years on city council, that was one of my priorities during development years in San Clemente, making sure that we had the funds to build these facilities. We built the Mendocino Apartments. We built Cotton's Senior Living, 105 Presidio, Estrella property for senior living. So we've done a lot. We can do more. But I believe that permanent supporting housing should be a regional issue, supported and paid for by the regional participants. San Clemente just doesn't have the funds to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. And we've had Mr. Rush join us as well. So we'll let you answer this question as well, Mr. Rush, after Mr. Wu's response.
I'd like to talk to permanent supportive housing first because the shorter answer, and the answer is I will not incentivize permanent housing. The city by law, just so you know, cannot discourage permanent housing, permanent supportive housing. It has to treat it as if it was a regular apartment building. So with that, I will say for the homelessness issue, a regional issue demands a regional solution. My approach would be address the inventory at the same time address the root reason. So for the inventory, we have to collaborate with the state, county, sister cities, and the nonprofit organizations to find a regional solution to basically to set up a regional shelter somewhere. I don't believe San Clemente has a suitable land for it, but somewhere it needs to be set up. So that our police department, police force can enforce the anti-camping ordinance and to protect the quality of life. On the long term, we have to address the root reasons, start from the education. Education students and the young children stay away from the drug, prevent it from happening from the first time, like FAM, preventing emergency financial assistance to prevent people falling into that situation. And then lastly, without addressing affordable housing, it will never be a complete approach. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Mr. Rush, I'll do a quick introduction to our audience since you've been able to just join us. Mr. Laron Rush is a musician and businessman. Laron is a 5-year resident of San Clemente and is pursuing his Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Management at the University of Phoenix. Mr. Rush, the question before the candidates is, what is your solution for our homeless issue in San Clemente? Do you support permanent supportive housing?
Yes, I would say I would support it. The solution is, as we move forward into that direction, we have to find a place, a location, the city council members, to support the homelessness and figure out what we can do and just figure out a whole solution so they can be secured and get back in the community and find their place back in, you know. That's what we are, as a community, should do for the homelessness and just help them the best way we can, you know, even though some of them may have mental issues, but we have to just push forward and just just find a location. It's not hard to do. We just gotta just figure out the right solution. That's what I would say.
Thank you. I'm going to take a question that was emailed in advance, and I'll let all the candidates know in advance that it's in reference to the lawsuits and legal costs that have been a situation here in the city for quite some time. So Michael Snow emailed in advance, how would you address city legal costs to fight lawsuits, real or frivolous or provocative? Settle versus fight, question mark. And I would also let you know, this got numerous other votes from the Chamber of Commerce, which characterized the question in this way. The city has had a history of litigation, oftentimes as the defendant. These ongoing lawsuits have cost the San Clemente taxpayers a lot of money that might otherwise have been spent on public safety, infrastructure, maintenance, etc. How do you propose we better manage our time and tax dollars and avoid future lawsuits? And we will start with Mr. Boden.
Thank you, Steve. And it's common knowledge that our city has faced significant legal expenses over the past couple of years, which is unacceptable. And moving into the future, we have to avoid that as much as possible. And truly, I think the best way to avoid that is to have a cohesively operating city government, be it with the council or the council and the staff, and the council staff and outside entities. So that's number one. I think we really need to be a cohesively operating organization. Just like an individual who's looking to avoid litigation, our organization should be cohesively and soundly operating to avoid litigation, to be proactive in how we're addressing the problems that we face, and not exposing ourselves to liability or risk in potential litigation. There are certain quality of life issues like, TCA, for example, fighting the toll roads. Some of these are important fights that we need to fight for the quality of life of our residents. But if we can avoid litigation, that's what we should focus on. And the best way to do that is to have a unified and soundly operating city government.
Thank you. Ms. Vidrine.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. The question is, the city has had a history of litigation, oftentimes as the defendant. These ongoing lawsuits have cost the San Clemente taxpayers a lot of money that might otherwise have been spent on public safety, infrastructure, maintenance, etc. How do you propose we better manage our time and taxpayer dollars and avoid future lawsuits?
First, I'd review the status of each litigation with the city attorney. It's been my experience that there's often acceptable compromises which can be found. I would also be open to changing law firms or bringing these services in-house. We need to not look for litigation, but look for ways to come to solutions to compromise without expensive court case. One example is the property that the city is considering taking by eminent domain on the corner of Pico and Veracruz. That property was sold. We can possibly look at something besides a costly lawsuit, which could be up to $700,000 or more. We could look at a possible land swap for that property owned by that private owner, or a partial rezoning of that property. We should always look for ways besides costly litigation to settle our conflicts and our differences of interest. So that's just one example.
Thank you, Ms. Vadreen. Mr. Dahl.
During my 16 years on city council, our legal fees were relatively stable. There weren't any real giant lawsuits the city was involved in, other than some landslides and such like that. And to be perfectly honest with you, some city workers made mistakes causing large lawsuits. I think the biggest thing we can do right now is hire an in-house city attorney to take care of everyday legal issues, the really benign issues, and then hire out experts in each legal field to be able to either defend or prosecute cases that are in the interest of the city of San Clemente, especially with the TCA. I think the city would have been smarter to enter into a tolling agreement with the TCA to reduce legal costs over the last few years, and make a compact with the TCA and agree between both the city and the TCA to stop all future toll road development from Oso Parkway South. So I think in the future, it would be a good idea to do that and pursue other legal avenues that are less costly.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Mr. Wu.
Yes, the city in the past has been too aggressive on the legal lawsuit. The council needs to make sound judgment, which I can help because I'm a person based on logic and reason. And then also the city needs to get legal advice. When one doesn't happen, the other one can cover. But if neither happen, then we got in problem. The previous emergency shelter was declared illegal, and that was an expensive lawsuit that's unnecessary. There are necessary lawsuits, for example, the suing the toll road. That is, so pick your fight. Only fight against the issue that you really need to fight. So for the other thing, be a little more disciplined about how much spending you use. Also, be willing to compromise. The hospital is a perfect example. We got a small victory about the rezoning, then we back off and settled with the hospital. I think it's a wise move to limit our legal expense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Mr. Noblock.
I would eliminate the current conflict that exists in the city attorney's office, whereby the city attorney's law firm, private law firm, handles outside litigation. So in essence, it's a incentive for litigation because the city attorney, not that they would intentionally do this, but the fact is that the city attorney makes money off litigation that is sometimes generated by his own advice. So I think an in-house attorney is important. I would appoint an ombudsman, a legal ombudsman, to deal with every outside lawsuit that currently is pending to see about resolving them. I think another problem with the litigation, and it's several $1 million a year that should not be spent. Part of the problem is the hostile anti-business attitude that this city historically, when I say historically, I mean the recent history, this anti-business attitude that has been demonstrated by the city. I think that'll be resolved by pro-business friendly counsel that can set proper policy. As a private attorney working for the largest title insurance company in the country, I manage the placement of over $130 million in outside legal fees. I know the costs can be extreme and they can mount up quickly, but they need to be managed properly by someone who understands what a law firm does and what an appropriate rate is for the services. And I think I'm uniquely qualified to address that role.
Thank you. Mr. Rush.
Yes, I believe that we, City of San Clemente, should have an in-house attorney, and as city council members, we should be able to go to them and talk and discuss everything, what we should fight for and what we shouldn't, to save costs, and just communicate with one another at all times, and that will save the city a lot of money if we all discuss and come together, because that's what it should be all about, coming together and discussing everything, not just going about wasting the city money. But I mean, it got to make sense. Everything got to make sense, and that's what I would say for that problem.
Thank you. And I'll remind the candidates, you can see the order for answering the next question. However, the question in the Q&A queue right now that has the most votes is directed to one candidate in particular, that is Mr. Bowden. So I will let you go first on that, Mr. Bowden, and then if any of the other candidates have a reason they would want to answer that question, we'll hear from them. You mentioned about differentiating yourself from a certain other person that ran for city council. Quite a few people on social media try to connect you two all the time. I have seen your responses to this issue before, and I am currently convinced with that answer. With that said, I think it would be great for the residents of San Clemente to hear you denounce that connection and how you are much different than this other individual. Mr. Bowden.
Yeah, happy to answer it. I'm sorry to the other candidates to be responding to a question directly addressed to me, but the person that I was referring to, as many people know, is Jackson Hinkle, who ran for city council last year and was unsuccessful. I did support his campaign with a $100 donation to his campaign and was pretty busy with work last year, not super focused on the campaign. But as time went on, more things were revealed about his character as an individual and the things that he had said and done in the past, which I did not certainly align with. And since that campaign, more and more has come out, which I've been disappointed with and certainly also don't align with. And so even though I thought at the time that he was an impressive young man who'd done some great things at the San Clemente High School and really showed as somebody who's young and had potential, I think that, you know, running for city council or whatever that process was impacted him in a way that made him more aggressive and more extremist and hasn't really been positive for our community. And so I've been disappointed in my support for him in the past, and I'm certainly not ideologically aligned with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Are there any other candidates that would like to make a comment?
Yeah, I would just like to say, if I could, Steve, that I have to agree with Tyler on this. You know, each candidate needs to stand on their own. I think we shouldn't have guilt by association. I can understand the comments that were made. I've experienced the same comments. People say, gee, Steve, someone that you know that's supporting you, a regional politician, actually likes the toll road, therefore you must be a toll road guy. I mean, those allegations are silly. I think each of us needs to stand on our own merit, and I want to respect everyone that's taken the time and energy to put their name on the ballot and get into the arena and fight the fight. So Tyler, I appreciate you running, and Godspeed to us one and all.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Noblock.
I have to say that I understand that each candidate runs on their own platform and who they are as a person, their history, but I think it's wrong to bring someone into this forum tonight that is not here to speak up and talk about who they are as a person. So I have issue with us identifying Jackson Hinkle by name without him being here to defend himself. And I don't think it's fair to compare Tyler with Jackson Hinkle. They're both different people with different platforms, but I just find it wrong to identify a person without them being here and having the opportunity to talk about them. That's not right to not value their contributions and their character.
Thank you, Ms. Vidrine. Are there other candidates who would like to make a comment? And we do know that Mr. Hinkle is not running in this election, and so he is not a member here in our forum this evening that we know of. He could be in the audience.
And how would you feel if you were Jackson Hinkle in the audience and unable to respond to the question and what was said about him on this forum?
The one thing I would say is that this is an issue in Mr. Bowden's campaign, and it had 11 votes from the audience to address the issue. And so we are definitely allowing our audience to interact with their candidates and understand where they stand on the issues this evening. So with that, we have the order of the next question, and you can see it in your chat function there, candidates. Ms. Vidrine, you will go first. The question with the most votes right now comes also from Mr. Glenn Walker. And it is a similar question that was emailed in by Mr. John Cox, who commented about the impact of the COVID crisis on the businesses in San Clemente. So we'll use the question that's in the queue right now with 8 votes, and it says, how would you partner and work with San Clemente Chamber of Commerce to protect our businesses during this tough business climate? Ms. Vidrine.
This is a very difficult time. We have to reopen businesses. We have to reopen schools. We have to follow the recommendations that are given to us by, from the state and local health departments. I would work with the Chamber of Commerce and businesses in San Clemente to look at additional funding that might be out there that's not utilized. State funding, county funding. I think they need a liaison at City Hall to help them work through. Businesses need a liaison to help them facilitate those funds that might be available out there. We can look at open dining and what we need to listen to the businesses and respond to them and make this an easier process for them and support the businesses in San Clemente.
Thank you, Ms. Vadreen. Mr. Dahl.
During the last almost 9 months now since COVID hit our community and hit the United States as a whole, business has been really depressed. Folks have been staying home, going to the supermarket, providing their own food and not going out to dinner like we used to. Consequently, there's a lot more money for each individual to spend on home improvements and stuff like that. The city should work directly. The planning department, the building department should do everything they can to help local residents with remodels and upgrading their houses. Also, it's going to be a real challenge for our restaurants in the next 4 or 5 months with winter coming on, and with the constant changing of the governor's ideas of what we should do. It's a challenge to the businesses, it's a challenge to the city, and it's a challenge to the citizens. So I think once the governor gets his act together, puts a good plan together, we'll be okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Mr. Wu.
There are a lot of things we can do to help the business, work with the Chamber of Commerce. One thing I would like to address first is that we must contain the virus more effectively so that the economy or the whole society can be fully open. That's a prerequisite. With that said, there's so many things we can do. We've used part of a Del Mar to help the business to set up a table on the street, which attract people. People like sitting outdoors in this climate. We are looking at, or we should look at the other ways to widen the pedestrian walkways. For example, we can try a one-way street, or we can close off the street for a day to accommodate events. That will attract more foot traffic and the business activities to the street. Also integrate downtown to Pierbo, so that will make a full experience for the people who walk from the T-zone all the way to Pier and back. North Beach Historic District is another example. Once we set up the district and the Miramar Theater is open, we're going to make that North Beach District make it the historic destination of entertainment and a recreation center to attract tourism and offer job opportunities and business opportunities there. That's just a few things. They also streamline the permit, et cetera, to make it a little easier for us to do business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Mr. Noblock.
In response to the COVID situation, I have 2 words to address that, and that is extreme flexibility. Our regulations are made for normal times, not for extreme times. These are extreme times and it requires extreme flexibility. I think our city's been fairly flexible in working with the restaurants for outside dining. That's one of the benefits I think that we'll enjoy long-term. I think people are realizing that that's a pretty cool thing. In addition, people working from home, they're realizing, gosh, that's a pretty cool thing too. But one thing that does concern me is that our city government should be a reflection of the people and the businesses that are in it. Our businesses have suffered greatly. We've had a lot of people lose their job. They don't have their income. The landlords haven't received rents. The tenants haven't received paychecks to pay their rent. But somehow the city's unaffected. All the city personnel is unaffected. They get their paychecks like clockwork. I think our city government should reflect what our citizens are going through. And I think the city should probably be cranking down its belt to respond as the businesses and the citizens have had to respond. And that is with extreme care and caution. I don't see that. I think, again, the government of attitude is, we're here, we're the government, we have the power to tax, and we're not going to be impacted. Stay out of our building, and our paychecks will continue to roll. I think government needs to reflect the people that they represent in more ways than just financial.
Thank you, Mr. Noblock. Mr. Rush.
Yes, I would say for the COVID crisis of the situation, I would say to extend the outdoor dining as long as possible. Also see what grants and budgets that may have been left over from last year's budget to donate outside heaters for the weather change coming. Because as we see, COVID is it's not going away. It's staying in here, lasting longer than expected, and we may have to adjust to the long term and see what other possibilities we can do with the city and just come together as a community and figure out what's the best solutions, what else we could come up with and figure it out like that, because the people is what's important. It's what the people should want, and we should listen to the people and what they want to do. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Mr. Bowden.
Thank you, Steve. And first off, I should say as a business owner with a small business in San Clemente, I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Business Association. And I have to commend both organizations for everything that they did at the onset of COVID to support businesses in informing them what the rules were, what the liability landscape was that they were facing, and how they could most effectively address that situation and get back to business as quickly and safely as possible. So I really have to commend both of those organizations, particularly the Chamber, in doing that. I've been on their email list. The city was able to step in at some point and incorporate Jonathan Lightfoot as an economic development director. I think he's doing a good job. And once he was put into that position, the city started allowing businesses to conduct business in an open air format. And I've really enjoyed that. I live in the downtown area, and I think it's something that we should continue on a permanent or seasonal basis moving into the future. And one more thing, I'd just like to say that, through the Chamber and through the Downtown Business Association, I think the city can really engage with local businesses even more than we're already doing. And I'm seeing it happen where we're gathering input from retail and restaurant businesses in the community to find out what would help them to operate more efficiently or operate with better business and more economic development. I think we should continue doing that as much as we can, especially as the north part of town continues to develop with the Los Molinos district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Mr. Dahl will go next. And the next question comes from Annette Thurman. San Clemente High School brings pride and value to this community, and the campus is in desperate need of improvements / redevelopment. Bond measures have been widely unsuccessful. What solutions do you have to address this important issue? Mr. Dahl.
Well, I think bringing it up to the attention of the community. Unfortunately, these bond issues have not passed because of the fact that people are tired of being overtaxed in the state of California. So it's a real issue. One suggestion at one time was to opt out of the Capistrano Unified School District and have San Clemente with their own school district, of which we had back in the 40s and early 50s. It's going to be a real challenge to get people to vote for it. The city has spent a lot of money with realigning Pico, so we have safe egress and and safe entrance to the school with traffic lights, and we've supported the school in many, many different ways. But until the state gets their act together and assists local school districts with more funds, I think we're up against the same situation every couple of years with the taxpayers are tired of being taxed. And until they get fed up, I don't think it's going to change.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Mr. Wu.
Well, it's a school district issue, but the cities can still do a lot to help. The city has a after-school program. We should consider expanding it. The city supports the Boys in the Club program, and we should continue to support it or even expand our support to that. And we also, as a planning commissioner, I've consistently support alternative or more opportunities for people to get educated. So there are quite a few private schools, whether it's supported by nonprofit organization or charity group or church. And I've always supported that. And that's something that city can do to accommodate a better education opportunities. That's all I can say. I wish that the bond issue get passed, but it's decided by the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Mr. Noblock.
Well, the improvements that need to be made to the high school is something that the city of San Clemente is not necessarily going to be able to resolve. Needs can be addressed a number of ways. Currently, the various teams and sports leagues and bands have private fundraisers to provide the needs. That's always an option. But you know, the city doesn't control the school budget. That's an independent elected body with a separate political subdivision to specifically govern the school, the high school, and the issues there. One thing I would say is that knowing a little bit about the school budget, I think a lot of those issues could be addressed by the school district, taking some of the huge administrative budget that they have and the non-teacher budget for oversight and the bureaucracy that organization has, and funnel some of that money into needed school repairs. So that would be my suggestion for perhaps school board members who are running for office now.
Thank you, Mr. Knobloch. Mr. Rush.
Yeah, I would see if people in the community are willing to do fundraisers. Also see if graduates of parents will volunteer to help the school to raise money, and other people to be able to donate. And in actuality, it's up to the community also to make the school better and to raise the money, because the kids are going to the school to provide the education. So it's up to the adults to figure out a plan and to upgrade the facilities, and everybody just come together and we just talk about what's needed to be done as a community and build from there and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Mr. Bowden.
Yes, thank you, Steve. And as a graduate of San Clemente High School almost 15 years ago, I can certainly recall that even when I was in high school, the school was in disrepair and definitely needed some work. And we're now 15 years later, and it's in most cases the same buildings. So it certainly needs more work, needs a brush up. I was grateful to visit Principal Carter a few weeks ago on campus, and I'm really glad to see how well they're operating with the funds that they have, innovating to improve the experience of the students on campus. But the fact of the matter is they need significant work to that campus moving into the future. Obviously, Measure H didn't pass, and so we're left with the situation that we had before. And as was mentioned previously, it's not really in the purview of the city, but I do think that we can work with the school districts, work with our residents to help them to understand the needs of our high school so that we can support them, because we're one town and one team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Ms. Vidrine.
I think we can lead by example. Schools are a priority. The city can look for ways to support our local high school, support the programs, have good communication, see what their needs are, see how we can support them in their programs. We do have excellent schools in San Clemente, including the San Clemente High School. The teachers, the administration, the programs there are excellent. Let's just support them and hold the school district accountable for their budget, and just always look for opportunities to assist our local schools, working with the school district and working with the state in any way that we can.
Thank you, Ms. Vidrine. And I want to thank our audience as well for submitting so many questions. We've still got 25 in the open queue. And I'll remind the audience, we're not going to be able to get to all of the questions this evening. We're approaching time. However, if there are ones you really feel strongly about, please vote. Click on that little thumbs up icon, and it'll help that question get to the top of the queue. The first candidate who will answer next will be Mr. Wu. This question comes from John Cox. It's got 7 votes. Serving the great city of San Clemente is not about national politics. It is about showing up and working to solve the many problems of the city. How will you make a difference with your effort, and where will you focus your efforts first? Mr. Wu.
Yes, well, I have done a lot. In the past 5 years, I served on planning commission. I spent well more than 2,000 hours to look into these issues, walk the project sites, talk to people, listen to people, deliberating, and voting on those issues. I'm a chair pro tem of planning commission. I'm a permanent member of design review subcommittee. I served 1 year on coastal advisory committee. So I'm well versed and well knowledgeable on these issues. I'm an issue focused people. I want to solve problems. I don't have a lot of ego. So that's my modus operandi, so to speak. And so that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Mr. Noblock.
Yeah, I would say that currently our city is at build out, so we don't have any major local issues. I think the toll road issue, as many people have said, is pretty much hopefully getting wound down, so that won't be as big a problem. I think where I would focus my attention is on fixing a couple of the anti-business things that have occurred in the past. Number one, we have a penalty for citizens that have a beef with their city government. If they disagree with staff decisions and file an administrative hearing prior to a lawsuit, the city has put the burden on the city's legal fees on our citizens. I think that's a terrible thing. I think it's a burden that needs to be reversed. I would put my focus initially on having a dog beach. I think the city needs to have a portion of our beach where responsible dog owners can take their pets and have fun in the sand and the sea. That's important. I would also reinitiate the ethics code that was outlawed by a prior city council when issues of mismanagement, bad ethics, and Brown Act violations were alleged. The ethics committee was disbanded. I think that was a terrible thing. We need transparency in government, not less transparency. So that's where I'd focus my attention initially.
Thank you, Mr. Knobloch. Mr. Rush.
Oh yeah, can you repeat the question again?
Yes, and I'll remind all our candidates as well, you can read the questions in the Q&A function when you open it up, and I will repeat from Mr. John Cox. Serving the great city of San Clemente is not about national politics. It is about showing up and working to solve the many problems of the city. How will you make a difference with your effort, and where will you focus your efforts first?
I would focus my effort on the people of San Clemente, talking to them, because I talk to them every day. When I'm at work, they tell me their concerns and what needs to be done. And I'm a good listener. I always is here for the people, no matter what. They're their priority, because they're in the community, and just building with the city safe, keeping the city safe and secured, and knowing what we can do. And the children, because they are the future of San Clemente, make sure they're okay. And that's my answer.
Thanks, Mr. Rush. Mr. Bowden.
Yes, thank you, Steve. And I'm really glad this question was asked, because it really speaks to my political ideology. After working on some political campaigns back in 2012, I became a little disenchanted with the national political stage. and eventually realized how important it is to focus on local government, because truly that's what impacts the quality of life for all of us more than anything. And so that's really what I've done over the past several years, is gotten involved in my community. It's something I'm fascinated with. It's something I really enjoy doing, whether it's serving my community through community service or serving my community through civic duty. I think it's something that we should all be doing more of. And as a city council member, how I would go about doing it is to bring the council together, unify the council, and then engage the community so that they can participate in our civic process more than they do now, and get off of social media and into a community forum format where we can talk about the issues that we're faced with and solve them together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Ms. Vidrine.
I'm an open-minded leader who does the research before forming a decision. I work hard to understand needs and am consistently professional. My priorities will be a hospital for San Clemente, emergency services, and hospital care, to reopen businesses and schools, health and safety, reduce risks, and act responsibly. We need to have environmental health and sustainability. We need to maintain vigilance, rein in the TCA, press for removal of our nuclear waste. We need to utilize state programs and funding to fix the problem of homelessness professionally. Treatment, basic housing, food security. There's a lot of work to do. I'm a committed leader. I will serve with respect and put the people first. I will be a voice unifying San Clemente. And I will just ask, listen to the people talking tonight. Who do you think is actually gonna work towards unifying San Clemente? I've heard a couple of positive people. I've heard several negative people. Let's look for a voice that is going to unify San Clemente and work for San Clemente issues. We don't need people that are going to divide our city, and let's just work together. And I am focused and ready to serve.
Thank you, Ms. Vidrine. Mr. Dahl.
I think the question has a lot to do too with people showing up for city council meetings. It's an obligation that you take once you're elected to show up and to participate. We've had a problem with a council member that hadn't been showing up because of his work schedule. Most important thing is I have the time and I have the energy. It takes about 40 hours a week to be a city council member, believe it or not. Reading through reports and staff reports and agendas, participating in local and regional committees, such as right now I'm on the Orange County Vector Control District Board of Directors and the San Diego Association of Governments Borders Committee since 2008. I've got the time, I've got the will. When I was on city council for 16 years, I think I only missed a couple of meetings because I had a good rapport with my fellow firefighters and we could trade shifts and be able to work. So it's a big time commitment. It's not just showing up every 2 weeks. It's a lot of work, but I'm up to it.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. And I'll note that Mr. Noblock will answer the next question first. The one thing I do want to let the audience know, even though we probably won't get to all the questions, I know we will not get to all the questions, we do not have enough time, we will share all of your questions with the candidates so that should they choose to answer those questions through their campaigns, they're willing to engage with you. So they will have all of your questions following this event. The next question comes from Michael Winston. What is your position on the funding level of our sheriffs? Do you favor increasing or decreasing funding or keeping it level, and why? Mr. Noblock.
Thank you, Steve. I think the level is probably not all that bad at the present time. Public safety is probably our #1 concern. And with what's been going on in cities around the country, I think people are more concerned about public safety and their neighborhoods. So I think policing is important. I think it's important that we stand by our deputies and support them. I think if anything, there might be an opportunity to increase it because currently our staffing levels for the for the 40 plus deputies that we have in town don't provide for coverage if there's sick leave or vacations. There's no minimum staffing level. We have that in the fire situation, but for police, we don't. And I think probably we need to look carefully at minimum staffing levels to make sure we have complete coverage all the time. So I think the police department, as our probably #1 priority in government, without a safe public, we don't have a civil society. That's extremely important. So I would be supportive of maintaining the police services budget and if anything, increasing it when necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Noblock. Mr. Rush.
Yes. In the city of San Clemente, they should keep the level the same for the police officers, because the city as right now is safe and nothing is too much concerning of situations happening that I've been living out here. And there could be much worse situations, but there's no worse situation happening. And then until that arises, then you should be able to increase the budget of the police officers. Until then, you got to keep it level, because they want to make sense to increase. That'd be nonsense, because this is not LA or San Diego or nothing, but we're in a safe city and safe environment. Everybody look after each other in the city, and that's my thoughts on that question.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Mr. Bowden.
Yes, thank you, Steve. And first, I'd like to say I have a lot of respect for our men and women in law enforcement. I have friends and family members that serve as law enforcement officers, and what they're faced with on a daily basis is very challenging. It's definitely not an easy job to do. It's a thankless position, and it requires a lot of respect from the community. I certainly support public safety and our sheriffs, at least at the funding level that they're at now. If it's necessary to increase funding, as Steve mentioned earlier, I would support that. And I think that would come in discussion from our sheriffs. But really, I think what we should be focusing on is how we can make things easier for our law enforcement officers. And I think the way to do that, particularly when it comes to an issue like homelessness, is to support them through other avenues in collaboration, like homeless outreach and mental health, to support them on a daily basis out in the streets, so that they can focus on more significant crime in our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Ms. Vidrine.
I believe in funding our police. I believe in funding our schools. I believe in supporting hospitals. The city of San Clemente needs to know who our deputies are, who are protecting our neighborhoods. San Clemente deserves community engagement with the police department and the homeless liaison deputies. Police can be a positive and supportive presence at our schools, at our parks, in our neighborhoods, and on our streets. It is going to take leadership and action from the Orange County Sheriff's Department and City Council to build trust and relationship. We need to look for opportunities to engage, be a presence, to build relationship, trust, and connections. A couple other things. I would ask for monthly coffee chats in rotating neighborhoods in San Clemente. Provide the opportunity for residents to ask questions and get to know their deputies and police leadership. I would support neighborhood watches to increase safety in our community, working with our OCSD for training and ongoing support. We need weekly safety reports in the local newspaper or the San Clemente Times. That would increase awareness of police activities related to crimes and citizens' requests for police assistance. We can support our newly formed subcommittee on public safety. They are working on solutions to supervise and support our OSCD. So I believe in funding our police. I believe in funding our schools. I believe in funding hospitals. At this current time, I believe in minimum staffing levels for police. They're asking for body cams. I think those have been purchased. They're looking at finalizing their policies before that's implemented. But I think there is more to our police department than just looking at funding. There's other issues that we need to look at right now. And I think that is very, I think we're very aware in our city and very aware in our county and as a nation. So let's support our police department. Let's give them the resources they need, but let's also, it's up to City Hall, it's up to City Council we hire the police. We have to take responsibility for what the police does in our community and on our streets. So let's just work at building relationships.
Thank you, Ms. Vidrine. Mr. Dahl. You're currently on mute. Can somebody unmute Mr. Dahl? Thank you.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I think we should increase public safety Sheriff's Department funding. Our officer to citizen ratio is way down compared to the surrounding cities. And I think it would be incumbent upon the city council to find more funding to increase officers on duty and adding another beat. And I support the minimum staffing. And for those folks that don't know it, you can see what's going on in the city every day, minute by minute, by going to the OCSD blotter app on your iPhone or your Android phone. And it tells you exactly what's been happening in the community for the last 7 or up to 30 days. And it gives you areas where crimes have been committed and such. So body cams, I think, are a great thing for the officers for their personal protection and the protection of the citizens. So I think the ratio of officers to citizens should be increased, and we should increase funding to the Orange County Sheriff's Department.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Mr. Wu.
The city always has a budget constraint, and the next year it will be worse. So I want to balance our budget. With that said, I will keep our police services budget level. The reason is very simple. It's a basic service. A safety need is very fundamental of human needs. So I will not reduce it unless the city is about to bankrupt. Now, I'd like to borrow this time, the rest of the time, to answer the question I missed from John Cox about attendance. In the last 12 months, I attend all 36 meetings from Planning Commission and the Design Review meeting. I had a perfect attendance. And also the first issues I will focus once I'm on diet will be first thing I will renew the legislature to permanently ban toll road going through St. Clemente. The session starts in December. Secondly, I will introduce a sunshine ordinance to improve the government transparency and accountability. And then thirdly, I will guide the hospital reopening process. We're waiting for the survey to come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. And we are coming up on time. So I want to just let the candidates know as we're approaching time that we'll be coming up on closing comments soon, just so you can organize your thoughts. But we will ask one more question. There are several questions in the queue on the TCA and where the candidates stand there. And those 2 different questions have multiple votes out there, and that issue has not come up tonight. So we'll start with Mr. Rush and follow that order through. Mr. Rush, I will read the question that came in from Jake Rabbits. Regardless if it's in your jurisdiction, would you be in favor of eliminating the TCA?
If it comes down to me, I would have to have a conversation with the council and decide what's the best solution and the process we should take. And we come together as a collective and we all decide together, because it's not only me, my decisions, it's everybody's decisions. And that's what I would say to that question.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Mr. Bowden.
Yes, thank you, Steve. And short answer to the question is yes. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think the original charge of the TCA was to implement these toll roads in Orange County and pay for itself and then dissolve. And so I think that it should carry out that mission and actually do it. rather than carrying on more debt and trying to expand more toll roads, particularly in San Clemente. That said, I was proud to see the victory in protecting the San Onofre Park that was signed into law by the governor recently. I'm happy to see that, and I think the fight continues. We need to continue to look into the operations of the TCA, make sure that the extension of Los Patronos does not impact residents of San Clemente, and I would support ultimately dissolving the TCA as their original intention was slated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Ms. Vidrine.
I think we need an exit strategy for the TCA. I was happy, as Tyler said, that Governor Newsom today signed into law that there are no toll roads or new roads through San Clemente up to San Onofre State Park. I do not support the TCA, and I'm looking for an exit strategy for the TCA for San Clemente, and that's my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Vadreen. Mr. Dahl.
Well, the demise of the TCA is more of a legislative and legal issue. Their bond requirements require them to pay off and give the roads back to the state of California. It's going to be a long and arduous path. It's not something that can happen overnight. I do not support the continuation of the toll road from Oso Parkway south. And this 22 alternative is, to me, a big waste of time. We already have La Plata. It's handling the traffic just fine. I would make the County of Orange require the ranch to provide their own arterial roadways and make sure that the ranch, if they make any impacts on San Clemente City streets and arterials, that they should pay for expansion or realignment.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Mr. Wu.
TCA should be dissolved yesterday. It has outlived its life. With the route around San Clemente to connect to Interstate 5 dead, TCA will never have enough traffic to pay off its loan. And its remaining responsibility can be taken by OCTA and Caltrain. There is no way that TCA can continue to do anything to go around San Clemente or go through San Clemente. We will fight against it vehemently. So that's my position on TCA. It's a typical bureaucracy that wants to stay for its own purpose to continue to live. Unfortunately, by the time TCA is dissolved, the people probably will hold it back, and because they've accumulated a mountain of debt, and that's the sad effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Mr. Noblock.
The function of the TCA has pretty much been completed with the toll road to Oso. It's not going beyond Oso. And as Jim mentioned, the TCA is a legislative created body, which has not just a function of building toll roads, but maintaining them and paying off the bonds, and that'll be going on for decades. So if the TCA is dissolved, someone's going to have to pick up the responsibility for maintenance and bond payments. That doesn't mean that the OCTA, Caltrans, or someone else couldn't step in as a fiduciary and fulfill those duties. But in terms of their function and their goal, which is the construction of toll roads, their charter's pretty much been completed. So if the legislature decided to eliminate them, I would be very supportive.
Thank you, Mr. Knoblock. So we are nearing the end of our session this evening and wanted to give the candidates one last chance to share their views with the audience. Candidates, please take 1 minute to give the audience your closing comments. We will start with Mr. Bowden.
Yes, and I'd like to thank again the Chamber of Commerce and First Amendment Voice and all the other candidates for being here tonight and putting on a great forum. I was glad to be here. And, you know, oftentimes when people look at me, they think that I'm a lot younger than I actually am. People think maybe that I'm naive or inexperienced or don't have a full perspective of life or the world or the needs of the residents of the city of San Clemente. But I'm here to tell you that that's simply not the case. I've got 15 years of leadership experience, and I've led teams of all different sorts from all different backgrounds successfully. My leadership style is collaborative, and I'm a servant leader. And that's what I'd like to bring to the city council so that we can right the ship, unify the council, hire a city manager, support our small businesses, and build a better San Clemente moving into the future. I hope to earn your vote. I'm Tyler Boden, running for the 2-year term on the San Clemente City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Ms. Vidrine.
I will strive to bring stability and functionality to City Council. My background will help us manage the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. I will preserve our city's unique quality of life and work every day to solve San Clemente's most pressing issues. The election will result in 5 council members naturally curing part of the deadlock. I have proven myself as a consensus builder in my work. Elect me to office. I'll advocate for a hospital in San Clemente, a community hospital with emergency services and hospital care sized to meet the needs of our San Clemente community. I can speak on this subject with some authority, having been a former director of surgical services at the former San Clemente Hospital and also a former director of maternal child health at the Palomar Hospital. I was responsible for budgets, organization, patient safety, and standards of care. I have a vision for rehab services for our senior population, low-risk maternity services for our younger growing families, medical and surgical beds and services matched with community needs. Hospital care is a quality of life and public safety issue. I will work to bring our hospital back to San Clemente. Let's build San Clemente back better. Vote for Donna Vadreen for San Clemente City Council. Thank you for your time. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for First Amendment voice.
Thank you, Ms. Vidrine. Mr. Dahl.
I'd like to thank the Chamber and all the other folks that are running for the 2-year term for participating in this forum tonight. I think the first 5 priorities I have, if elected, will be, of course, hire an experienced city manager, replace a city attorney with an in-house attorney, have the new city manager prepare a 5-year strategic plan for city services and the city budget. Number 4, have a team building workshop for the council to air out any differences between members that the city council, so the city council can work as a team. And number 5 is reopen San Clemente Hospital with a provider or possibly creating a hospital district with the cities of San Clemente, Dana, and San Juan Capistrano. I think my leadership over the last 40 years in San Clemente has done a lot to bring about good change in the community, recreational amenities, beach sand replenishment, and a whole bunch of other issues. So I've got the time, I've got the knowledge, and I've got the leadership capabilities to put in another 2 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Mr. Wu.
Before I speak, I'd like to share a video with you given to me by a local business owner.
Hello, my name is I'm John. Many years ago, I think
Eddie is a perfect example of people who worked very hard against all obstacles to achieve their American dreams. Nowadays, he owns a gas station, provides essential services to people. He offers lots of job opportunities. He pays a ton of taxes, and he makes routine donations to our nonprofit organization. He has a positive impact to our community. I value his family's endorsement more than any politician. It took him 10 years, over a decade to get his permit. But the key issue, can we expedite the permit process? Absolutely. But the key takeaway is that everyone should be reminded that our government is for the people. I will hire the right city manager, listen to residents and the communities and business community, and strive to make it work for you. I'm Zhen Wu. I'm here for you. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Mr. Noblock.
The city of San Clemente needs a collaborative, fiscally conservative, pro-business mindset member of the city council. I believe I am that person that can fulfill that role. We need to be transparent. We need a council member who's a helper and an advocate for local business, not one who tries to find a reason to keep business out of San Clemente. I'm a strong public safety advocate, which is why the Association of Orange County Deputy Sheriffs has endorsed me. I'll work regionally on the issues that affect just not our city, but the surrounding areas, which is why all of our regional elected officials have endorsed me. And I will make sure that the quality of life remains strong in San Clemente. We're at complete build out, so really it's about quality of life now. And I think that's vitally important. And I would be honored to be selected as the 2-year representative on our city council, and would ask all of you watching tonight, you 72 participants, please consider voting for me, Steve Noblock, for city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noblock. Mr. Rush.
Yes, the city of San Clemente. I'm here for the people to listen to your concerns with anything you want to talk to me about. You can always come to me. I'm always approachable. I'm a leader. I've been a leader my whole life. And with anything, I'm for the people. That's all I care about. What the people want. That should be the main objective and what we should try to achieve. And as a community, just come together and work together, not try to argue and bicker, but just communicate, talk civilized. And that's what we need to do in this community always. And I'm Laron Rush. Let's ride this wave together. I got you guys, no matter what. I'm here. And that's my ending.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. And thank you to all of our candidates. We are extremely grateful for your willingness to step forward and serve and run for election. And we know many of you are already committed in other ways throughout the government. So thank you for your continued service. Candidates, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this event. We applaud you, the audience, for showing interest in who is running for your city council here in San Clemente. If you know of friends or family who were unable to watch this webinar tonight, we will post it on the First Amendment Voice YouTube channel in the next 24 to 48 hours. Please look for it there and join us next week when we will hold a candidate forum for the candidates seeking the 2 4-year seats that are opening up on the city council this coming election. By asking your questions and hearing from the candidates themselves, respond to both the Chamber of Commerce's questions as well as the ones that you send in. You'll be better informed when you get to the ballot box to choose your candidate for this election. At First Amendment Voice, we believe that citizenship is not a spectator sport. Thank you for getting involved and taking an interest in our Spanish Village by the Sea. Good night.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, guys. Good night.
Good night, everybody.